This is the story of a 23-year-old Dutchman who reached world number 3 while carrying a name that belongs to a dead child, surviving a psychological breakdown at the dartboard, and building a career on top of both. Nobody talks about any of it because Gian van Veen doesn't look like someone who nearly fell apart. He looks like the future of the sport, but the path that got him here is stranger and darker than anything his result sheet suggests. Pieter Gerard van Veen, that is what his birth certificate says. Born April the 23rd, 2002, in Puerderoyen, a Dutch village in the province of Gelderland, so small it holds somewhere between 400 and 800 people, depending on how you draw the boundary line. Van Veen confirmed it himself in a 2024 interview, saying in Dutch, "Officieel heet ik helemaal geen Gian," which translates as, "Officially, I'm not called Gian at all." And that's when the story becomes something else entirely. Dutch darts commentator Kurt Westerman went on the SBS6 program De Oranje Winter just days after the 2026 World Championship final and explained where the name actually came from. His exact words: "In the neighborhood where Van Veen grew up, a young boy named Gian passed away. It made such an enormous impact in that area that his parents decided to call their own son Gian, so that boy would never be forgotten." Every time that name echoes around Alexandra Palace, a child who died in a small Dutch village gets remembered. Every dart he has ever thrown in professional competition has been thrown under a name his parents chose as an act of remembrance. None of the commentators mention it. Most fans have no idea. But Van Veen carries it with him to every single tournament, in every single leg, without ever making a point of it. Before the dartboard entered the picture, Van Veen earned a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering, finishing in 2023 with plans that pointed toward aviation. Two things closed that door: his height at around 6'4" and colour blindness, which disqualified him from the strict medical requirements for a pilot's license. His own explanation: "I'm quite tall, so it was a bit difficult, and I'm a bit colourblind as well, so that doesn't help. As a pilot, you've got very strict requirements, and it was not really my dream job. So a part-time office job near Amsterdam Airport Schiphol filled the gap while darts took over. The engineering degree sat on a shelf, and the hockey became the career. None of that would look like a sensible decision to anyone watching what happened to him next on the Challenge Tour, because what happened nearly ended everything. At 18 or 19 years old, somewhere in 2020 or 2021 while competing at Q School, Van Veen developed dartitis, and the word alone carries dread in professional dart circles. There is no physical injury, no scan that detects it, no bandage that fixes it, just a brain that blocks the most basic action in the sport, the act of releasing the dart. Careers have collapsed under it, players have retired because of it. And what caused Van Veen's case, by his own account, was pure fear. On the Tops and Tails podcast in 2025, he put it this way: "For me, it was anxiety related. I was just scared of losing, scared of what people might think of me when I played bad. In my head, especially when I was on a double, I'd think, what happens if you miss? People won't laugh at you, but they'll think things. You might let people down, your family, yourself. And when all that's going through your mind, you're not going to release it because you don't want to miss." What nobody expected was what happened next on the Challenge Tour. A leisure centre in Barnsley, the Metrodome, and the teenage Van Veen standing at the hockey unable to throw while his opponent watched and drew the wrong conclusion entirely. Van Veen's words from the same podcast: "I still remember one game on the Challenge Tour when I first got dartitis, and my opponent was angry at me because he thought I was doing it on purpose. I was in tears, crying my eyes out in the middle of Barnsley Metrodome because I was struggling so badly. And for my opponent to tell me I was cheating or something, it was heartbreaking." A teenager stood at a dartboard in a genuine psychological crisis, tears on his face, physically incapable of throwing, and the person opposite decided it had to be a con. Not concern, not recognition, not a simple question. An accusation. That says something uncomfortable about the pressure environment of the Challenge Tour, where players chase points and prize money hard enough that a crying 18-year-old reads as a threat rather than someone who needs help. And none of it made Van Veen walk out. He stayed and he worked through it. Here is what makes the dartitis chapter genuinely strange. Overcoming it actually improved his game beyond where it started. His average before dartitis sat at a steady 85 to 88. With dartitis, he still averaged around 85. The condition didn't drag him below his baseline, but working through it pushed him to 92 or 93, and he explained exactly why on the Tops and Tails podcast. I started averaging like 85 with dartitis, but when I got rid of it, I averaged 92, 93, because in my head, I was like, you're not going to release the dart until you're 100% sure you're going to hit the target. So it took a while, but I started playing better, winning more games, and that massively grew my confidence. The conditioning required to survive dartitis built something in him that natural talent alone never would have, and it left a physical trace behind that is still visible at every tournament he enters. Watch him at the oki before any throw, and you'll catch a brief practice motion, a short warm-up movement he makes before the real delivery. Van Veen called it the ghost throw, though with characteristic honesty he said, "People still see me do the ghost throw. I think that's what it's called, just to get my arm loosened up. That's still an effect of dartitis, because I didn't do it before, but I'm okay with that. I'm just embracing it." That small movement tells the whole story. Barnsley metronome is still there, in every single throw, absorbed rather than erased. Once Van Veen came through the other side of dartitis, what followed was a career that accelerated faster than almost anyone saw coming. 6 development tour titles fell in 2023 alone, at events across Milton Keynes, Wigan, Hildesheim and Leicester, and topping the development tour order of merit that year meant finishing ahead of a player named Luke Littler. File that detail away. November 20-24 brought the PDC World Youth Championship, won by a 6-5 scoreline against Gian van Veen at Butlin's Minehead Resort, and with it a piece of history. Van Veen became the first Dutch player to ever win that title, having lost the previous year's final to Littler. He then defended the title in November 2025, beating Bo Greaves 6-3 in the final. Back-to-back World Youth Champion. That same year, fellow professionals voted him PDPA Players Player of the Year, which is the kind of recognition that doesn't come from statistics alone. Then came Dortmund on October 26, 2025, and the Machine Seeker European Championship final against Luke Humphries. Humphries held a match dart and missed it, and Van Veen closed out the deciding leg on a 100 checkout to win 11-10. Taking the £120,000 top prize and a career-high ranking of world number 7. PDC Europe confirmed what the numbers already showed. At 23 years old, he had become the youngest European champion in the history of the tournament. The semi-final en route to that had been a 11-9 win over Michael van Gerwen, which was itself a signal of what was coming. The 2025/26 PDC World Championship runs as both Van Veen's arrival on darts' biggest stage and, for now, the edge of what he could reach. Christo Reyes, Alan Sotar, Madaz Razma and Charlie Manby all fell on the way to the quarter-finals, where a 5-1 win over Luke Humphries triggered something beyond the scoreline. That victory over Humphries was the exact moment Van Veen overtook Michael van Gerwen as the Netherlands' #1 player, ending a run van Gerwen had sustained uninterrupted since October 2012. 13 years at the top of Dutch darts, finished in a single quarter-final result. Van Veen's reaction sits somewhere between disbelief and joy. The goal was to be Dutch #2. That was the dream, because in my head, you cannot overtake Michael van Gerwen, so to have done that now is so special. Gary Anderson followed in the semi-final on January 2nd, 2026, and Van Veen beat his self-described idol 6-3, averaging 103 in a controlled, composed performance. Then came the final and Luke Littler, defending champion, averaging 106 across a dominant display that ended at 7-1. Van Veen spoke plainly afterward. "It doesn't feel great, of course, but especially to get smashed like I did today." For reaching that final, his prize was £400,000, part of a total tournament fund of £5 million, and rising to world #3 completed the picture. His reflection after the defeat landed not as the words of someone defeated, but of someone cataloguing, "It will drive me on very much. I know what it's like to play in the World Championship final now. I know what it's like to get really far in the tournament, but I also know what it's like to lose in the final." 2 major matches after Ali Pali, and the pattern between these two is already refusing to settle into anything comfortable. Opening night of the 2026 Premier League, February 5th at the Utility Arena in Newcastle. Van Veen's debut in the competition and his first match against the player who had beaten him 7-1 3 weeks earlier. The result was 6-4 to Van Veen, and nothing about how he played suggested the World Championship final had left any psychological residue. February 22nd, 2026 brought the Poland Darts Open final in Krakow, and this is where the story of their rivalry gets strange. In the fifth leg, Van Veen landed his first televised 9-darter, back-to-back 180s, then a 141 checkout finishing on T20, T19, double 12. The crowd noise was everything you'd expect. The final scoreline was 8-4 to Littler. Van Veen's explanation was startlingly self-aware. "I wish I missed that double 12. Of course I'm very happy to hit the 9-darter, but I think everyone noticed in the next 2 or 3 legs I wasn't good. I was so excited about the 9-darter, my first one on the stage, and that probably cost me the final today. A perfect leg, a lost match, and an immediate understanding of exactly what went wrong. That combination is rarer than the 9-darter. Pull back and look at the full picture, and what you see is a player assembled from a series of experiences that would have finished off most other careers. A name borrowed from a dead child, carried without complaint to the biggest stages in darts. A psychological condition that froze him at the Oki in a Barnsley leisure centre while an opponent accused him of cheating. A ghost thrower that remains in his routine as a permanent reminder of what he went through. A colour blindness that closed aviation as an option. A first televised 9-darter that cost him a final. After the World Championship, his assessment of where professional darts stands right now, with us two, me and Littler, Josh Rock and Wessel Neiman. The young boys are here. We are trying to take over the old guard. He's done it so far. Even Luke Humphries is a young guy. This game is for the young players and we are here to show how it's done." A few years back, Van Veen stood in the Barnsley Metrodome crying at a dartboard, struggling to release a dart, being told he was cheating. Now the PDC Live Order of Merit shows his name third, behind only Luke Littler and Luke Humphries, with £943,250 in prize money earned. The youngest European champion the PDC has ever produced. Back-to-back World Youth Champion, Netherlands #1, ending a 13-year reign, £400,000 from a single World Championship run. None of that happened despite Barnsley. All of it in some way happened because of it. His own words close the argument. 3 or 4 years ago, I was in Barnsley, struggling with darts and crying at the table. Now look at me 4 years later, it's all been worth it. Before every dart he throws at the Oki, the ghost throw happens, and that small quiet motion is the whole story compressed into a single gesture. Still there, still visible, still carrying everything.